Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:02 p.m. and a quorum of members is present. So the meeting of the Board of the Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby.
Here.
Mr. Helmer.
Here.
Mr. Kurth. Ms. Schulz.
Here.
Mr. Seidel.
Here.
Ms. Unger.
Here.
Ms. Wondercheck.
Mr. Kurth let me know that he has a prior family commitment this evening and will not be here. Ms. Wondercheck did let me know she was going to be leaving the meeting early tonight. However, I do expect her to be here yet today. Go on then to roll call. I'm sorry, not roll call. Recess to closed session. I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
Madam President, I move to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Section 19.851C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider closed session agenda, executive session to discuss superintendent's evaluation, approval of closed session minutes from October 25th, employment performance and compensation matters pertaining to staff, and D, to return to open session.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer and a second by Mr. Seidel. Please take the roll.
Mr. Helmer.
Yes.
Mr. Seidel.
Yes.
Ms. Crosby.
Yes.
Ms. Schulz.
Yes.
Ms. Unger.
Yes.
We are moving into closed session and will return to open session around 7 o'clock. It is now 7 o'clock, and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For all who are able, please rise. And now, for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by providing the agenda to the City Library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal-Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. Up first, we have our elementary update from 6th grade student representative from Elmwood.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Veal, the principal at Elmwood Elementary, and I am thrilled to introduce Josh Golombieski, a 6th grade student at Elmwood, and to welcome his wonderful family and Megan Whirl, one of his 6th grade teachers that helped him to prepare for this evening. He is a student leader in our building and is currently one of our junior coaches on our playgrounds. He was nominated as one of the Citizens of the Month last year for his positive attitude and willingness to go above and beyond for all of our staff and students. Josh has spent many hours preparing for this evening, just like him. He gave up recess times, lunch times, coming up with his own ideas, and videotaping important happenings throughout Elmwood. Josh truly exemplifies what it means to be a lion cub and to roar towards excellence. Let's welcome Josh.
Hi, my name is Josh Golombieski. I thank you for allowing me to come and share this presentation with you. This is how I feel about Elmwood. I feel that Elmwood is a great place to go to school. They have amazing teachers, great staff, and good education. Starting my 7th year now and going into 6th grade, I've had amazing teachers who have helped me when I needed it. This is the year so far at Elmwood in the first quarter. Last year, we completed a design thinking space, which you can see a 5th grade class using this year. It has mobile soft seating and wobble stools for active and flexible learning. In this video, you will see Mr. Slonak's 5th grade class using the design thinking space. They were using graphic design on their iPads to finish a project. At Elmwood, we have had a Everyone Counts Week in honor of the district's observance of Anti-Bullying Day on September 29th, 2021. Every student, staff member, and family is a part of the Elmwood team. In the face of bullying and intolerance, we support and teach each of our students to be the one. This means that it only takes one individual to stand up, stand together, and count. Classroom activities that encourage kindness There was a reading of The One by Catherine Otashi by our principals. Anti-bullying skit performed on the Elmwood Today Show. Spirit Day, wear any outfit with a number showing that everyone counts. There was a book showcase in the library reinforcing inclusivity. And a playground challenge. Try a new game or play with someone you haven't played with before. This is an example of our library display that included themes of anti-bullying, kindness, and inclusion. Here is Mrs. Veal and Mr. Sams reading The One by Catherine Otashi. Being the one means we stand up and stand together against bullying to ensure that everyone counts. Some of our 6th grade students on the Elmwood Today Show crew recorded a skit to demonstrate what it looks like to be the one and take a stand against bullying. The skit shows what to do if someone is being bullied, how to help and support others being bullied, and showing that everyone counts, even the bullies, because we show kindness to all. Kindergarten Color Week. This year, the whole school participated in Kindergarten Color Week. Kindergartners learned how to recognize, spell, and read the primary and secondary colors. Each day, students and staff from all grade levels dressed in the same color to support their learning. Colors were seen throughout the hallways and common areas to reinforce learning inside and outside the classroom. Each color was announced and spelled on the Elmwood Today Show. Here you can see Mrs. Breitenfeld's kindergarten class wearing blue, Mrs. Leach's 5th kindergarten class wearing red, and Mrs. Corum's kindergarten class wearing yellow.
Today is Wednesday. We were in yellow. Y-E-L-L-O-W spelled yellow. On Thursday, please wear green or orange.
This year we celebrate 20 years of our building being built. A year-long celebration of Elmwood's history led by 5th grade teacher Mr. Slonak. Each month, Elmwood Student Leadership Team researches the unique items and traditions that have become familiar to everyone, yet many have no idea about history behind them. 6th grade ESL team members, Anvita and Sophia, interviewed Mrs. Karolek, discovered and shared history behind our sculpture and artist-in-residence collaboration.
Hi, I am Sophia.
And I'm Anvita.
We are 2 members of ESLT.
This year is our school's 20th year anniversary, and we want to celebrate by talking about the history of Elmwood.
This year we had our first ever all-school read at Elmwood, which was a lot of fun. It was a chance for all of us, home and school, to come together and read the same amazing book. We were able to share our book thinking with each other and have fun at the same time. Here is a short book trailer we read and learned about a third grader named Bisbee Alexander Tam, also known as Bat. This story encourages all readers to enjoy and explore lives from Bat's particular point of view. Free copies of A Boy Called Bat was given to all students and staff provided by Elmwood Home and School. There were trivia questions every Monday and Wednesday for students to have the opportunity to submit their answers about the text. There was an all-school read website and videos of staff reading each chapter out loud to students. Here is a short clip of Mrs. Veal reading the first 2 chapters with our favorite lion cub. Here is Mrs. Yokish announcing trivia question winners on the Elmwood Today Show. She does this 2 times a week. Students submit answers on website, and 1 winner is selected from each grade level.
Good morning, Elmwood. My name is Miss Yokish, and I am so excited to be here this morning to announce our first round of trivia winners.
Thank you. Let's roar towards excellence.
Thank you. That was a very nice presentation. This evening, I do not have a president's message, so let's see. Actually, I'm sorry. Privilege of the floor is next. Meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the business of the schools and therefore are not public meetings, but meetings held in public. This portion of the meeting is an opportunity for you to come and voice your concerns to the board. So please do not be offended when we quietly listen. We may even take notes. We do not immediately respond to your questions and comments. This is a time for you to talk and us to listen. Thank you for coming to voice your comments and concerns. When I call your name, please step up to the microphone, address the chair, and state your name and whether or not you are a resident in the school district. Each presentation is to be restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Privilege of the floor will be limited to 1/2 hour. Presentations are not to be designed for purposes of engaging others in a debate in this forum. Discussion of certified, classified, or professional personnel, or of individual Board of Education members should not be considered an appropriate topic for this forum, and the speaker will be ruled out of order. We have 1 speaker this evening, Scott Yench.
Hi, Scott Yench. I'm a resident of New Berlin. I know that this board guards its time closely, even when more from the community come to speak about relevant and important topics than can fit in the allotted time. You choose your time over their comments and feedback. Since the time of the board is limited and of such high value, we must be sure to concentrate your efforts on activities that benefit our students and the level of education that we provide. I am addressing you tonight out of my concern about the proposed resolution that is on tonight's agenda. The resolution addresses a memo that was written by the NSBA 6 weeks ago out of concern for the safety of school board members across the country as a result of activities that we have been fortunate to have not experienced here so far. After that letter generated controversy among certain circles, a retraction was issued by the NSBA. It seems that some around the country have seen a political opportunity and will not let the subject rest. When I saw this topic on the agenda, I had to go look it up to be aware of everything again. I'm guessing that a majority of people in this community aren't even aware of that letter or its contents. What does this resolution do to serve the students, staff, and parents of the school district of New Berlin? Once again, it seems as though this board is happy to engage in political behavior instead of focus on its critical primary mission. The threat contained in the resolution could result in this district being without membership in WASB, and such action would mean that the policy review process currently underway would be without the resources that this board has been depending heavily upon. Is the district prepared to follow through on this threat? Is it prepared to pay for the legal review of our policies that we have been happy to forgo up to this point by repeatedly leaning on the boilerplate policies from WASB? Furthermore, what good does rescinding membership in WASB and in turn NSBA do for fixing the situation? Are we showing our students how to resolve differences by issuing ultimatums of taking our toys and going home? Or do we demonstrate through our actions how to be part of a solution to improve a situation that may need improvement? We should never issue threats that we are not prepared to act upon. I believe that we should strive to be a part of a solution instead of an obstruction to progress. But moreover, I believe that we should concentrate first on our core mission, and that doesn't involve getting mired in political fights. Let's lead by example and apply this board's precious resources to more important matters at hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Since there's not a president's message, we can move on to the administrative team report. We have our secondary student representative update.
Girls volleyball became regional champs in October and made it to the semi-sectional game. Girls swim and dive had 3 girls medal at conference: Olivia Lucas, Autumn Pelzak, and Lena Rawson. West football had 2 athletes named Academic All-State, Connor Viss and Matthew Sundarajan. Cheer is hosting a bingo night on November 12th to raise money for their season. Fall sports are wrapping up as we head into winter. Basketball, wrestling, and boys swim and dive will be starting their seasons today or next week. DECA collected 5,000 non-perishable food items for the New Berlin Food Pantry in their Trick or Can drive. NHS hosted a flashlight candy hunt for elementary-age students on October 29th and had a great turnout. Students read clues and searched for candy in the field house. The winter musical, Mamma Mia, had auditions last week and is getting to work soon for the big show. The Spirit of New Berlin Marching Band went to St. Louis in October to perform and watch other schools' performances. Senior Mohima Eich performed as a part of the WSMA State Honors Music Project. Spanish instructor Nicole Thompson has been selected as the 2021 Distinguished Educator for the AATSP Wisconsin. The prom committee met last week to start planning for the dance this spring. And New Berlin West has signed a deal with Drexel Building Supply, and changes to the fieldhouse are underway. DECA students even had the chance to interact with the Drexel employees. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the superintendent's update.
I have a couple of updates. First, wanted to update the board on COVID related matters, and wanted to let you know that certainly we continue to monitor COVID numbers on a daily basis, and in fact sometimes even over the weekend. While we've experienced some peaks and valleys throughout the year thus far, we seem to have our numbers go up last week. Fortunately, as is typical, numbers today are trending back downward. In talking with the Waukesha County Health Department, numbers generally are stable in the county, but it just seems like there happens to be pockets of COVID positive cases in each varying community, and our numbers have gone up along with a couple of 3 other school districts in the county compared to where we have been previously throughout the start of the school year. Other matters related to COVID are that hospitalization rates among school-age children remain flat as they have throughout the pandemic. And as you all might be aware, COVID vaccines are now available for children ages 5 to 11. I did want to clarify that I did have a couple parents email me and let me know of an approved vaccine, and I just want to clarify that per the health department, it's not been formally approved, but it's been gotten that emergency approval similar to the vaccine that was approved for adults and then for kids ages 15 and up and then 12 and up and so on. So I did want to clarify that, as that was clarified by the county health department last week. While we will not hold vaccine clinics in our schools, the county has assured us that the pediatricians, clinics, and pharmacies can handle any influx of parents that wish to have their children or their child or children vaccinated. Things are certainly much different for this age group. Certainly there are less of them. And the need for it compared to when the vaccines initially came out was certainly much higher. That's why you saw vaccine clinics at the Waukesha County Expo and like at the at State Fair Park and so on, it was mainly because of the influx of adults that were seeking that vaccine. That no longer seems to be the case, and again, they didn't have those types of additional setups for when the COVID vaccines were available for others that were younger, and certainly they're maintaining that even now. So again, while we won't be holding those clinics, they should be available as needed through their own specific pediatricians. Moving on from COVID, I did want to clarify that this Thursday we are hosting our annual Veterans Day celebration. It will be hosted at New Berlin West in the Performing Arts Center at 9 a.m. And we are happy to have that back in person this year. Last year we provided an alternative to that celebration, and we prepared a video that we shared with our community. We certainly invite all local veterans and their families to join us. Our guest speaker that we initially had planned, who is a graduate of New Berlin High School 50 some odd years ago, unfortunately is unable to make it. He had an injury over the weekend and just doesn't see himself being able to hobble up to the stage as needed. And so we are welcoming State Senator Dale Kuyenga back, who actually was Veterans Day guest speaker for us about 3 or 4 years ago, and was asked him if he could chime in today, and he's more than happy to do so. But this for those that are not able to join us in person, it will be live streamed, and it will also be recorded for either you, board, or anybody else to either watch during the live stream or watch it after the actual event. We are going to have our band, orchestra, and choirs present and performing from New Berlin West at the event. We actually have guest speakers from both Eisenhower and West High School that will be presenting. The mayor will be there to share his recognition of local veterans. The city does do a separate celebration, and they do that at the Veterans Memorial in the evening. We do also have elementary representatives there that will be helping us lead in the Pledge of Allegiance as representatives from their respective schools. We would again encourage all to join us in that great celebration. And that's what I have for my updates today. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have the consent agenda, which will include the notice, approved minutes of October 25th, and new curriculum-related student groups. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer and a second by Mr. Seidel to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. On to our regular agenda. First on the regular agenda is a presentation relative to long-range facilities funding plan.
Madam President, do we want to switch this? I think you said Chrislyn had to leave early tonight.
Then do I have a motion to adjust tonight's agenda to move up item B, discuss possible approval of resolution supporting WASB rescind NSBA membership?
I'll make a motion to discuss the approval of resolution, or switching regular agenda item B, discuss possible approval of resolution supporting WASB rescind and NSBA membership with item A, presentation relative to long-range facility funding.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion to adjust the agenda to switch B and A items. Motion by Mr. Helmer, second by Mr. Seidel. Any discussion? Then all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes to move that. So on to the item for discuss possible approval of resolution supporting WASB rescind NSBA membership. So I'll just give some background on this because I know for some board members this is new. Just bring up, for those of you who are watching, it is in the packet, the public packet. And this is in regards to a letter that was put out by the National School Boards Association, which was sent to our President Joe Biden on September 29th, 2021. This became quite a controversial letter, and we began to receive some questions from parents about our local school board's affiliation with this National School Board Association. So just so you understand, we are not directly members of the National School Board Association, but WASB, the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, is a member of this national association. So that is our relationship to them. When this letter first came out, I know I personally had some issues with it and thought about, well, what would we do as a school board, since I felt that this did not match our values and beliefs in this school district. I didn't say anything to anybody else, but Mr. Helmer did approach me and ask me, what are we going to do about this? Because the public wants to know our position as a school board as far as this letter goes. And so I did then put together this resolution and have it presented this evening. It does say possible action, but I am going to ask that we open up discussion tonight and then we table it to vote on at the next school board meeting, since we do have a missing member and one of our members does have to leave early. And so basically, as I stated, the letter that came out from the National School Board Association does not represent the values of this school district or its beliefs. And I would like to open up to discussion to see how the other school board members feel about this. And it's not that we're going to necessarily leave the Wisconsin Association, but it's basically telling them that we support them leaving and that we would reevaluate if they don't. Because if they're going to be associated with the National Association, that really doesn't represent us, then that is why we're questioning whether or not we should remain part of the Wisconsin Association. So do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Point of order?
I think so. I thought you said in your introductory comments that you wanted to table it. So wouldn't the main motion be one to table it rather than to approve in order to initiate the discussion?
Well, I believe that in order to initiate debate, we have to have a motion, and then we'll table it after we can debate it.
That's fine.
Yeah, because I just want to be able for us to start debate.
Okay, sure.
Because this is new, and I want to hear from the rest of the board.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Helmer and a second by Mr. Seidel. All those in favor? I'm sorry. Any discussion? I forgot. Thank you. So there's a discussion. Go ahead now. Since Mr. Helmer made the motion, you do have the floor first if you want to discuss.
Where do I begin? I have to be honest, when I approached Janet, I really didn't know much about the NSBA before this letter came out that is requesting the Biden's administration to use post 9/11 Patriot Act to investigate and prosecute school parents as domestic terrorists. The more I looked into it, they really are a political lobbying organization, and I don't think, as Janet mentioned, I don't think their views align with us. I searched for any instance of them lobbying for local control in order for districts to reopen and keep them open. I couldn't find any examples of them even doing that, or even encouraging people to do that before we did it. This partnership with NSBA isn't free, so we pay WASB and WASB pays them. So every dollar we give this political lobbying organization is one less dollar that gets to be spent on our kids' education. As the gentleman made the comment during the privilege of the floor, we do not use WASB for policy review. We use Neola, correct, Joe? So this is actually another reason why I think we also have to evaluate our membership with WASB as well, because we pay, is it 10 or 15 or?
It's based on student enrollment,
Okay.
so I'm not exactly sure.
I thought I remember
Russ,
seeing
it's
the number in the $10,000 range.
It could very well be.
Okay.
It,
So we need to look into that. But that money, again, if we're not using them for their policy review, it's another added resource or another cost that we're paying that we're not utilizing. So as I mentioned, I think we really need to reevaluate our membership with WASB as well as absolutely with NSBA after this comment that they came out. So I'm in favor of this motion.
Mr. Seidel, did you have any comments since you second?
Just one, this is a draft resolution, correct?
Yes.
So there's no resolution number being assigned, so we're not looking at, we can't really take action on this tonight, it being a draft resolution at this time, without a resolution number and things like that. I tend to agree with Mitch Helmer with some of the things he stated. I can't see why. I mean, we're not losing. We use Neola for all of our policies. So what are we using WASB for?
Yeah, we do utilize WASB for pre-legal consultation. If we do have, so part of the membership with WASB includes legal consultation to a certain degree with them. So we would typically, or I would typically ask Patrick or Kelly if we have a legal question, that rather than contacting our attorneys directly, that we contact WASB attorneys or their counsel first. But WASB will always tell us that this is our opinion and that you should run it past your legal counsel to affirm. Now, some things are certainly have a much higher degree of importance than others when it comes to their feedback, but that would be one example of, or an example of how we utilize them. I do know that, I don't want to speak for Diana, but Diana does utilize them for certain processes. So, for example, any changes to elections or any changes to other, school board type procedures and approaches, because they are your representative and because she is the school board's executive assistant, she needs to make sure that she's on top of those things. So again, as far as policy, we did use them at one point, but not since we've been with Neola now for several years.
To clarify, we aren't talking about leaving WASB. This is we were asking them to leave the NSBA, correct?
That's correct.
I think for clarification, we have, our membership dues are in March. So
Yeah, they're due. Well, they come due, but they're paid usually in July for the following school year.
So leaving WASB today wouldn't do us any good because
correct.
We already paid that membership. So
that's correct.
That determination would probably be made in January, February timeframe.
Right. I mean, I think it'd be good for us to know sooner than later. I'm not suggesting that you move on this tonight because you're not. But I also do want to clarify, and I'm not sure if Amy, because I think Amy and or Crislin are the longest tenured board members. I know at one point we were not members of WASB for similar reasons, or at least the school board was not. And I don't remember the last time that was, but that had been, maybe, about a handful of years that we were not members of WASB. But point being is that if the board were to make a change, obviously, as Mitch just mentioned, it wouldn't be until probably next school year, but we would want to know that sooner than later so that we can look for alternate options and the things that we do utilize them for. But what I can tell you is the rationale for not being members of WASB previously was because of similar circumstances that are being addressed now, not so much at the national level, but actually at the state level, with WASB in particular.
It's okay. Okay. So I'm the WASB rep for our board, and I've served in that capacity for, I think, 3 years now. 3 years, or maybe 4 years. I might have been 4. In any case, so just to give you guys a little perspective of what we get out of WASB, I use WASB a lot because I'm the WASB rep. So I use their website a lot, and I've done a lot of their online trainings, and I did some trainings on expulsion, like surrounding when we had an expulsion hearing for the first time. I did a seminar or a webinar about expulsion hearings so that I understood what my parameters were as a board member. I have also attended their state conventions where they offer resolutions. I've reported to the board about some of those resolutions that they have offered. I have participated in their Day at the Capitol event, which is a really, really great event. They didn't hold it in the last, they do only do it on the biennial budget years.
And then last year was really
right,
odd.
right. Yeah, last year we got gypped out of it because of COVID. So, but I did go in the previous budget cycle, and that was a great opportunity for me, and I think us as a district, for me to get in front of elected officials who really have a hand in what our funding resolutions are, because they directly impact what those formulas are, the funding formulas for schools. So I got to sit down with Dale Kuyenga, and I got to sit down with Joe Sanfilippo, and had a conversation with those people who are our elected representatives about our priorities as a district and where we need some support. And that was, and it was a full day at the Capitol, and I was able to participate with some of the discussions from both political parties, because both parties have power and both parties should be, involved. And I thought it was and that was a program all designed by WASB and executed by WASB. So I think that there is a little bit of the fact that, unfortunately, we only have one WASB rep, so I get to know about a lot of this stuff, whereas you guys don't get to know about it. So I feel a little bit when people are saying, well, what do we get for it anyway? It doesn't seem like we get anything for it anyway. Maybe I've done a really poor job as the WASB rep in educating you guys about what WASB does for us, but it is significant. And that was a troubling phrase in the resolution to me, that perhaps we would think about not being in WASB because of WASB's membership in an organization that sent one letter. And I think that I support Janet in that. I think that this is a good opportunity for us to have sort of a first read of this resolution and then come back the next time at the next meeting and discuss it fully. But I would put out an additional ask of you, Janet, to also put in the packet and in the public packet as well, that the letter, which I actually did pull, this NSBA letter, I pulled it out and I actually read the letter, and I did read it quickly. So I can't say that I got every single word because I was trying to get through it before the meeting. But I will say, what concerned me was I didn't see, there was a phrase in the resolution that said that in the letter that parents were equated to domestic terrorists. I didn't see that particular language. So if you could upload that letter to the packet for next time and kind of highlight the troublesome parts for everybody, for the public, for the board, for everybody, that would be extremely helpful to me as a board member, so that I can kind of see it through your eyes and see what you saw and see what troubled you. I think I would appreciate that. I also think that there was some language in the letter that I felt was appropriate. I think to Mr. Yench's point when he was speaking, I guess I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to achieve by this resolution. What do our kids and our families get from it? That's, I guess, my question. And so I think maybe it's just something for you to think. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just give you some things to think about maybe for our next meeting. But I'm trying to figure out, we do, in fairness to Scott's comments, we do kind of guard our time a little bit in this board and try to make sure that we don't go too long, we don't, whatever. So what do we get from this resolution? Why are we spending our time on it? That's, I guess, my question. And it's more of a question I just want to put out there in the universe and, not put anybody on the spot, but maybe we can all think about it and come back and talk about that. So, and I do apologize. I had an unanticipated transportation situation with my daughter tonight, and I've got to go and scoop her up, and I tried 4 other people, and I couldn't get another driver, so I apologize. But those are my thoughts.
Well, we first and foremost are reaffirming that we are supporting parents and that we do encourage them to be involved and to speak at our meetings and to contact us outside of meetings. Primarily, this is an issue because this national association stepped in and decided to speak on our behalf when they didn't even contact our local organizations. So they're really not speaking for us. So part of this is just to let parents know where we stand on that particular letter. Also, the letter was very heavily geared towards federal intervention in local school boards. The federal government does not have a place in intervening in local school boards. We have our local law enforcement who is here to do that. So as the resolution does state, we don't condone any threats or acts of violence. We certainly do not. But if something like that were to ever happen, the appropriate response would be from local law enforcement. We're asking for federal authorities to come in and take over would not be appropriate. So I think that's why this letter, why this resolution is important, is mostly to send a message to our community where we stand on it, that we back our parents, that we support our local law enforcement to be involved appropriate because the federal government doesn't know what's going on locally. And that's a waste of our federal government's resources anyway when we have our local authorities who should be doing that. And we're not debating leaving WASB at this point. Just it's basically letting WASB know that we would support them if they were to leave that national organization, because the national organization did not seek out WASB's advice on this, did not look to any local organizations to do that, and so it was very inappropriate for what they did, and we would support WASB leaving them. Maybe if they don't, that's where it's in there that we would reevaluate. And that would be a process of evaluating and looking at what would we lose versus what's the cost and where else could we get those resources from. That's a second motion that we would be making. This is basically a starting point of where we stand on this letter, what we would like to see WASB do about it. That's where we're at right now.
I just have one follow-up question for you, Janet, and then I'm going to scoot. So the national organization did, after the September 29th letter, submit a rebuttal and a retraction. Was that just not enough for you?
No, and it wasn't a very good rebuttal
That's
at all.
my question.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. I think that was a very good idea to add the letters to the packet, which I will ask Diana to do that for the next one. That was an excellent suggestion. I do agree with that. And I think that when people read it, they would not agree with it and would like us to take a stance against it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, any other? Go ahead.
So, you guys said you heard from parents. I heard nothing. I mean, I read this resolution and then Googled, like, what the heck are they even talking about? Because I did not see the original letter, hear anything about any states pulling out of the national organization or anything. So it seems a little large of an action for a single letter, especially a letter that was revoked. To Ron's point about what do we use WASB for, I will say I have attended probably 12 to 15 hours of WASB training, a lot, in my first year as a board member, but I continue to attend some webinars as relevant topics come up. So I feel like it's a great resource to us as board members in how to be a board member, because this isn't really something that you know how to do when you get elected. It's a very different way of operating. So it is really good to have a resource outside of our district that can kind of guide us with how should we be operating. I know Amy has brought WASB resources to the board in the past to kind of go through some things with us as well on kind of open sessions and meeting requests. And I had another point. What else was I going to say? I don't know. I would not even really necessarily want to question our belonging to WASB because I don't know where else we can get those resources. Similar to Diana emailing resources at WASB when she has questions. I've done that in the past as well when things have come up with the board that I'm just not sure if we're doing things correctly. I think with regards to some votes that we've taken and whether they should be in public session or closed session. So it's just a really great resource to us as board members. So not at all saying that I support or that I don't support parent involvement. Of course, I want parents to come and talk to the board, but I think the majority of this letter was in regards to threats that board members were getting, especially threats via the U.S. Postal Service, which I think is why they were trying to get federal government involvement, because that is who controls the postal system.
Again, we're not debating leaving WASB at this point. At this point, it is sending a message to WASB, our stance on that letter, and their membership in the National School Board Association.
Can I also offer a clarification? They didn't retract that letter. They apologized for some of the harsh language, correct? So they're still standing by sending that. They didn't say, we're sorry that letter ever got sent. We disavow everything in there.
That's how I read it, so that's why I think it's a good idea to include it in the packet so everybody can read it.
I agree.
Yeah, the original letter and the follow-up letter they sent, yeah, or the memorandum.
I guess I feel I'm sorry, Amy, I know you want to talk too. If WASB were looking, I mean, I read the WASB newsletters that they send out. They didn't mention anything about this either. So it isn't like WASB was looking for local school board support in their desire to leave the organization. So it seemed like it was coming from nowhere. Maybe a couple parents brought it up to you, but the whole board didn't even hear about it. So I feel like I echo Scott's point. Why are we wasting our time talking about it?
Well, WASB needs to start somewhere, and if it comes from a local school board, that's our job. You know, we're members, we need to voice what we thought about what's going on. So I don't think WASB tells us what to do, it's us giving WASB direction when it comes to policy and how they would react to a national organization. I'm sorry, Ms. Crosby, you want to speak?
No,
the best last.
I think the resolution where it says that we support them from withdrawing is fine, but is there a way to maybe not include we will reevaluate the membership? Like, that kind of is implied that if we support them and we're sending it and they don't, that we don't agree with them, right? So could we take that language out of it, saying that we would reevaluate the membership with WASB and just have that like as a, natural consequence to it? That's the only thing I had to say on that one.
Okay, thoughts on that?
I was going to add, I think no matter what, this came up and they haven't taken action. I think that's very clear in 6 weeks. So I think we have to evaluate. I think we're talking through it now. Do we get the value out of WASB? And I don't think that that's a bad thing to evaluate. If this is money that is leaving our institution to go for lobbying of federal and state people, and then we get some additional resources. Are those resources that we get out of this, the legal fee, the legal time, and some training classes for the board, is that worth the money we spend? I think that has to be evaluated every year. Whether it's a 10-hour process or a 30-second process, we have to do something on that every year.
Then do we still separate it from the resolution and make the resolution strictly urging them to leave the National Association and then take up reevaluating our membership separately? Or you want to still keep them together?
I like it still in there because I think that's what gives the teeth to this. What's the point of sending it if there's... They get their funding through us, same thing as NSBA. So if WASB pulls out of NSBA, they lose funding too. That's the threat, is the funding to keep sending out letters like this.
Well, if there's no other comment at this point, we can, I could call for a motion to table it and we take it up at the next meeting.
Madam President, I move to table the vote on this till next meeting.
Do we defer? Not table, say defer? Okay, I'm
Defer.
sorry.
That's right, 'cause we have to bring it
I'll
Okay.
second.
So we have a motion to defer and by Mr. Helmer and a second by Mr. Seidel. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, so we're going to defer this to the next meeting.
I'm opposing because I don't think we should even talk about it at the next meeting.
Okay, so we have 4 in favor of deferring and 1 opposed. So that motion does pass. Okay, so we'll go back now to our presentation relative to the long-range facilities funding plan.
As we had shared with the board when we were developing and finalizing the current original budget for the current school year, we informed the board several months ago that we would experience surplus dollars. And as a result of that, we were going to come back to the board once the original budget was approved, which it was last month, to discuss what we would recommend with said dollars. And that's what the presentation is here tonight. We want to talk about 5 different things specifically, and all these things kind of come together, or four main things. They all come together, and that's fund balance, Assert Funds, approved long-range facilities funding plan, and long-term debt. I guess the one piece that we haven't talked about as much, even though the board did move last year to make some changes to some debt, we are now kind of bringing that into the mix now too. And so let's start with fund balance. And as a point of clarification, fund balance has actually, this was actually approved by the board last school year. That we would actually go to utilize fund balance to move our capital project planning forward. And so this is what that looked like when we presented that. I do want to clarify that that you may notice a difference in that first year of that $17.5 million. Note that that was the balance after June 30 of this year. And as you recall, when Patrick had presented the original budget, there was carryover of things that weren't spent in the last fiscal year, mainly because of supply chain and not getting the supplies in hand during that accounting year. Then these were the amounts, and I'm not going to go through the details, but these were the amounts that were approved for funding the facilities plan by the board. And we went out 5 years, and then we had said, of course, we're going to review this annually. A plan is only as good as a plan. And then certainly beyond 5 years, we would continue to update that as we crept up closer to that 5th year. And again, here's where I will point out that in similar to what was seen in the previous page, if you go down to the capital budget, we actually initially only had $150,000 in there, but $700,000 of that had carried over from the previous year. So again, the numbers are not inflated. It's just for accounting purposes, that's why you're going to see that difference. Let's get into Assert Funds. And Assert Funds basically are the dollars that we have received as a school district as it relates to the American Rescue Plan signed into law in March of 2021. We can use those funds to reimburse pandemic response-related expenses dating back to March of 2020, and that the funds can be used for a variety of different things seen on the screen here. I do want to also mention that one of the things that we continue to look at, and as we get more details, is what does this all mean for the school district of New Berlin? And are you, because sometimes when you're dealing with federal dollars, there seem to be strings attached. And what I'll tell you is, dealing in federal grants or whatever, there's always a string or two attached to that. As we are aware, the only strings are that we need to spend dollars as specific to what we have here, or get reimbursed for dollars that are already here. And that's where it's at. Now, I have talked to, Patrick has talked to other business officials throughout the state. In fact, he's attended various conferences over the course of the last month or so. I work with the Waukesha County Superintendents on a weekly basis, and I'm also in touch with our local representatives to find out what they may know of any hidden strings or hidden things that may go with these dollars, and just know that we are making sure that we are staying on top of that, so that we don't become surprised by a school as a school district that now all of a sudden we need to require certain things, or we are required to do things that we may not be aligned to. That doesn't seem to be the case. It hasn't been the case, and it doesn't seem to be the case. But know that we will continue to kind of go to our resources to make sure that none of that changes as we go through this process. But these are the specific dollars broken down by ESSER 1, 2, and 3. As the board's aware, we've already received and spent ESSER 1 dollars. It's now ESSER 2 and 3 that we believe they're still working on formulas to determine how much exactly we will receive as a school district. These are conservative estimates, and so our assumptions are that this would be roughly what we would receive, and if we were to receive more, then so be it. But these are, again, our good estimations. And again, Patrick works with local and state level officials, and know that some of our local representatives were involved in the development of some of the legislation that led to how these dollars would be spent. And so we feel comfortable in that this is what we should expect as far as approximate dollars. And this is exactly how it's broken out. The dollars where you'll notice where it says that their district allocation, those are guaranteed dollars. It's the district supplemental estimates that are still up in the air, that they are still working on those formulas. For example, one of the key pieces that was brought into the legislation that we advocated for, because we were open last year and we were starting to question why other school districts were getting dollars when they weren't even open last year. And so some of what's written into these equations and these formulas is minutes of instruction while in school, or that were done face to face. And so they're still trying to figure all that out. They're still getting that data from us. They've gotten our information. Now it's just a matter of gathering all that information so that the state can determine how they're going to allocate those respective dollars that they have. And then we get to the next piece, which again we have revisited with the board, but we wanted to make sure we did our due diligence and kind of making sure that okay, if we're talking capital projects, that's one thing, but then also let's look at our long-term debt. And this is the long-term debt that we have that's non-ESCO. And again, ESCO projects were exemptions that were allocated to different school districts to be able to do certain things. And we don't believe it'd be in the best interest of the district to draw upon any of those ESCO projects because we are seeing a return on those investments, but really focusing on the long-term non-ESCO debt. And what we see in the foreseeable future is that first callable amount, which is set to come callable next spring in March. I do want to just set aside the numbers that, yes, you have your principal on the one column, but what's actually callable is the numbers that we're talking about, and that's in the right-hand column. So know that while, yes, we have $5.83 million in principal of debt. Only 4.535 of that is callable based on the bonds that are available to us. And then you'll notice that in 2027, 5 years from this March, we'll have another substantial callable amount, and then a much less substantial amount that following year. But let's have first things first. Let's talk about the debt that's callable in 2022. And that is where we have our recommendation to the board, which ties all of these different things together. First of all, if you recall when I shared with you what we have in this first slide, and that is fund balance, we are not going to be looking at spending down fund balance as has been previously approved. So I want to clarify that. At least when we get to that point. Patrick, is that accurate?
You're talking about what our recommendation is?
Yes.
Yeah. Our recommendation would be to not spend down the fund balance
as we had originally gotten approved by the board. So I just want to make sure that when the board gets into this, we're looking at amending what has been previously approved. But note that the project plan will remain very similar. So let's again move back forward to our proposal. We are recommending that instead of paying down or using the fund balance to pay down debt, that we actually instead use fund balance to pay off callable Fund 38 debt in March of 2022. That's that $4.53 million that we were just talking about. So again, I recognize that the principal amount that's available as a result of those issued bonds is $5.83 million. We're only talking about the callable amount, which is $4.535 million. That in essence would save the district $260,000 in interest for those 3 years. Now, Kate, I see because I know you were an advocate for those capital projects. Here is where we will move forward with that capital project plan. So since we will not have dollars out of our operating budget to pay for that debt that we typically would, we would instead pay for what's planned through our operating budget, through our general fund. And so, we would essentially levy for that, we would levy for those dollars in Fund 41 is what we would do within the budget. And again, that's why we wouldn't be spending down fund balance, because that will have already been taken place. But we wanted to bring this proposal to you as getting just kind of a general idea of what the board wants. We will provide more details. So, for example, Kate or Mitch is the chair of the facilities committee. You may want to know, well, what will we be doing? Well, we're going to be doing all of the things that the board has approved, and then possibly moving some things down that were beyond year 5, because we would have those dollars available to us. Now, again, the board can choose whether or not it wants to do that, but we would recommend at a minimum that you spend the dollars that we've already spending different dollars for the same projects that the board has already approved. And so I would bring a list of those to the board. I would provide them to you in the next board meeting packet, but we would not be seeking the board's approval until next month. And then should the board want or need any more information between now and then, we'll be happy to provide that. And then, of course, we would continue to monitor state budget to guide capital maintenance investments. And then again, yes, 5 years from now, when you're looking at that additional 5.185 callable debt at that time, as we draw closer to that, we may bring forth different recommendations similar to what we're doing right now. But again, in essence, you're paying down long-term debt as it's callable. You'll still be funding the capital project plan that the board already approved, just in a different way. And you may be able to do more. We would recommend that you do more because we have already got those dollars in the budget that we can levy for. So again, our plan is to bring back to you that plan of what are these other projects going to be. It's not going to look much different than what you've already approved. I believe in a couple of years you're going to see some things that'll kind of creep down in order to kind of match the dollar amounts that were already approved. But again, it's things that we have needed. They'll just be pushed down and compressed in these 5 years rather than say year 6, 7, 8, and so on. So with that, those are our recommendations. Again, we're not seeking approval. We'd be happy to answer as many questions as we can tonight, and then it's just a matter of what else do you think you need or want before you feel you can make an appropriate decision on this at the meeting in December.
I just have one. Spending the 4.53 million, that's coming from the general fund or the fund balance. So we'd be spending the money all at once, depleting a little bit of more of our fund balance now rather than in next year.
Correct.
We'd go from 16 to 11.5 million.
Yeah, we'd go from 17 to not quite 12 million because we're at 17 million right now.
I mean, is that still within our policies?
Well within the policy.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well within it?
Yes.
Okay.
And Patrick, I'm not sure if you have that document in front of you, but we would still, I think at the end of the 5 years, we'd still be closer to like 13 or 14% of fund balance, and the board's policy is 10%.
The question I have and why I'm wrinkling my brow is the slide says, estimated 200,000, whatever, savings in interest, but then what would we have spent year by year on the debt that is then going to be switched over to being used for capital maintenance? So that's kind of the information that I would want to see. So similar to the 5th slide currently, if instead of having the fund balance and the debt refinance amounts, we could get an updated version of that slide just to kind of see how the numbers equate when you bring back kind of the project list.
We can do that. And again, our plan is to actually get this to you well in advance of the meeting in December. So that, but we'll get this to you before the next board meeting. But no action at the next board meeting. It wouldn't be until the December meeting. We will be happy to do that.
I think we have a facilities meeting in 2 weeks as well, so we can talk about it more then also.
Yeah, and again, I wasn't sure if we needed a facilities meeting. It was just a matter, I could send out like this is our planned proposal, and if you all felt we needed a meeting, we'd be happy to. But I think you're going to see a lot of alignment in what's already been approved. It's just some of these other projects that again are being compressed in that, if the committee feels they need a meeting, we'd be happy to.
Kate, I think it's about 1.5 million per year.
Actually, I can give you the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to rattle them off right now. I'm just saying, Joe asked, what would we want to see? That's what I would like to see, is just kind of the restructure of how we're going to then fund the facilities.
If you have them up, Patrick, feel free to share just real quick.
Sure.
And note taken, Kate, that will put this in writing as well.
I'm not going to rattle off great big long numbers, but in the first year, it'd be about 1.8 million. In the second year, it'd be about 1.9 million. And in the third year, it would be about 2 million. And that's consistent with what the debt payment would have been those years. I'm sorry, I don't have those exact numbers because that includes my numbers include $350,000 that we're already taking out of Andy Stefanson's budget.
So it's the numbers he mentioned less 350,000.
Yeah.
Well, it's 4.5 million over 3 years, roughly. Right?
Yeah.
Yep. Any other feedback, comments, questions that we can bring back to the board for informational purposes in your next packet?
I thought it was interesting that you mentioned the Assert Funds and how we got significantly less than other districts. I think that ties into the WASB conversation we just had as well. I think when we look at who's advocating for the best interest of us, we don't see that when it comes to the money that's coming to our school district compared to other school districts as well.
This isn't directly related to this presentation, but it just reminds me of how we were looking at projected deficits over the next few years. What have happened to those projected deficits? Do we not see them anymore?
Go ahead, Patrick.
If you recall, in my first year in the school district of New Berlin, the administration brought significant cuts from staffing and from other areas of the budget. For example, my department gave up, I'm not going to say willingly, but we gave up 3 positions. We've saved significant dollars in streamlining many of the programs that we use to manage the finances. We've saved significant dollars in managing the cost of our benefits that we provide to our employees. So we've made some significant cuts over the years to kind of bring our spending more in alignment with where our actual revenues are coming from.
I like to use the word adjustments. I know Patrick likes to throw the whole cut thing in my face, but we've made adjustments. But for example, in Patrick's department, they now have software that helps them and supports them in the work that they do. Quite honestly, we had antiquated software in there, and when we originally hired Patrick, that was one of the goals of when he brought his team here that they would do, and that allowed us to become more efficient. And so, Patrick has very talented individuals in his department. I know that, Kelly, for example, doesn't have an executive assistant herself. We've made adjustments, throughout. We continue to make adjustments for various reasons, and so we're very conscious of making sure that we attack those structural deficits in a proactive manner for all the same reasons that Patrick mentioned. And again, it's not a one and done thing either. We continue to evaluate our budget on an annual basis. I know Kelly, for example, in some cases will make adjustments to curricular resources, and not to say that we are not providing the resources to our students and our staff when they need it. It's just sometimes they can be deferred, and so Kelly is very conscious. But again, we've part of the surpluses have been because of many of the efforts that we've put forward, and quite honestly, because of what the board has directed us to do as well. So I just, at the same time, I'm not sure that I anticipated a pandemic to get us to this point. I don't know if anybody would have, but going through that and making the necessary adjustments too, has having certain contracts in place, for example, like our busing contracts, where if we weren't in service, we didn't necessarily have to pay that 100% of that, where other districts had to do that because of the way those contracts were written. In some cases, because we right now have in-house nutrition services department, and so we were still paying through layoffs and possibly unemployment in other ways, but in some school districts, because they were contracted, they didn't have that opportunity. So I also like to think that the way that we operate our business also helped in that we were ready to go. And then quite honestly, back to my my conversation related to Assert, we were paying people to do their job and not staying home to do something different. Now again, when we were forced to do that in the spring of 2019, we did what we had to do, and our staff worked diligently to do what they needed to do. But all of last year, I'm proud to be able to say that the board paid people to do their job, and not to do some alternative. And again, we are reaping the benefits of that. You can see that in now, again, yes, we had a bifurcated model last year where we had approximately 75 to 80% of our kids face-to-face, but 20 to 25% throughout the year fluctuated. We'll deal with that. We'll address that as was presented by Kelly and her team at the last meeting. But again, we are getting bang for buck is what I want to be able to clarify too. So, but again, I think we have a good recommendation here for the board. It pays down your debt, that long-term debt, and allows us to do the capital improvements that we've been seeking, which is certainly a good place for the district to be, a better place for the district to be.
I'm in favor of the high level of this, and I definitely enjoy the paying down the debt piece of it. The one ask I have is that when you come forward with the facilities proposal and we're moving stuff up, I personally would like to see projects that have an ROI be allocated first to that list.
Boy,
if we're moving
that's
anything.
great that you said that, Mitch, because you will see that.
I walk into something, is this what you're setting me up for?
No, it's not a setup. You will see that in there because we agree with you. We would like to see that return on investment. The one caution that I will share that I should have mentioned initially is that we are currently experiencing supply chain issues.
I was just going to add on that, especially on top of all of this, if we can get material in.
Yeah, and if any of you happen to know, folks that may be able to get these supplies, but for example, right now we are scheduled to do our first project with ROI over at Poplar Creek with the LED work. We are not getting the parts and pieces to do that work just for that project. And so I do want to clarify to the board that we may have alternative plans that we'll need to bring to the board as well. Because again, yes, we're moving the LED stuff forward, but if that, for some reason, that doesn't come, we do believe we need to then attack some other things if we can to take that place rather than just kind of having the money sit there until not really sure when the supply chain will get back to where it should be. So again, Patrick, I know that we've already discussed that, but again, that's just one example, Mitch, is that even the current project that the board has approved that we are currently in, we get some material, but not all the material and certainly not all of the pieces that we need at the same time. So while we may get like a shipment of this, well, I may need that in order to complete this. So that's what we're struggling with now, and I think each of you may be able to echo that in your respective work, but that's what we're experiencing as a school district.
There are people's full-time jobs that are chasing that every single day.
Yeah. But we are prepared to provide alternatives within that, again, depending on who knows what may happen in future supply chain matters.
Any other questions?
If you do have any additional comments, questions, concerns, just email me, and we'll be happy to bring that information and have it to you in your packet for the next meeting for approval in December.
Can you send me a list of the components you're short on the LEDs?
Happy to.
Thanks.
We do not have any action items from closed session. So then next is the future meetings and dates. Board meetings are generally held the second and fourth Monday, beginning at 7 o'clock p.m. in the Eisenhower Commons, unless noted otherwise. November 22nd at 7 o'clock p.m. is our next meeting. We do have a facilities meeting on the calendar for now at 5:30, same day. And then the meeting after that is December 6th, 7 o'clock p.m. Other important events and dates, as was mentioned previously during our meeting today, November 11th, Veterans Day. There's a celebration, 9 o'clock a.m. at the New Berlin West PAC. All veterans are invited to attend. November 24th, there's a staff in-service. There's no school. And then November 25th and 26th is the Thanksgiving holiday, no school. Time to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer and a second by Mr. Seidel. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.